I'm locked. Why is he invincible, bro? Finally. Damn, he went out mad easy, that guy. Ooh. Well, they fixed first person? Oh, I won. Somehow. Okay. Okay. This dude, bruh. Nah. I think they updated the zombies too to act more like zombies. Holy shit, I won. Alright. Dang, they really did update this game, bro. Nice. Woohoo! I'm happy and I'm celebratory. Wolfismachen. What is this? Ooh, what? Oh, a proper duel. Ouch. What a brutal fucking... Oh my god, 1 out of 3. Are you kidding me? Bruh. Oh shit. Fucking kicked him. I kicked him hard as shit. I think they reworked some textures, bro. All right.
bet many of us grew up seeing him as just a background character. But anyone who had the pleasure of watching original Dragon Ball knows Tien is a real one. Tien is a very important character in the general narrative of Dragon Ball. Back then, Tao Pai was the first serious antagonist to introduce stakes in the series. After his success with Tao, Toriyama would take the idea further with Ten Shinhan, and it would become anyone who had the pleasure of watching original Dragon Ball knows Tien is a real one. Tien is a very important character in the general narrative of Dragon Ball. Back then, Tao Pai Pai was the first serious antagonist to introduce stakes in the series. After his success with Tao, Toriyama would take the idea further with Ten Shinhan, and it would become somewhat of the format for the rest of the series. As Goku's first real rival, Tien deserves way more respect than he's given as of recent. I want to talk about his rise and eventual fall into the abyss that is the Dragon Ball background cast. I too would like to maintain my relevance, and the best way to help me achieve that is to sub to my channel. I'd really appreciate it. So, our introduction to Tien is rather subtle. Master Roshi's old rival, Crane Hermit, has come to the 22nd Tenkaichi Budokai to show up the Turtle School. With him are his two students. All we get out of
What am I
Tien
doing,
is
bro?
Here, we get the first example of Toriyama's habit of introducing villains in pairs, with Tien and Chaozu. After an impressive showing from Krillin, we get our first interaction with Tien himself. Here, he establishes himself as an antagonist, and asserts that he's not impressed. After making it through the preliminaries, Toriyama sets up Krillin to take on Chaozu, and we see Tien cares for his friend. Tien then rigs the matchups to ensure that he gets to fight Yamcha, who has been antagonizing him. Tien also seems to think Yamcha is the strongest Turtle School student, due to his age. Tien shows he can back up his threats in his fight with Yamcha, matching the Wolfang fist blow for blow, and even surpassing it. Then, even reflecting a legendary Kamehameha, quickly followed by a knockout blow. And, for good measure, Tien breaks Yamcha's leg. This unnecessary cruelty is enough to fire up Goku. Now, we get the payoff of Krillin's building rivalry with Chaozu. Their fight itself has a much more comedic tone, but it does contain some important setup for the fights to come. Chaozu unleashes the Dodon Ray, a powerful technique, on the same level as the Kamehameha, and Goku recognizes it, as Tao Pai Pai had previously used it against him. Tien is shocked to learn that Goku killed Tao Pai Pai, who we learn was a mentor to Tien. A bit later, Tien takes on the previous champion, Jackie Chun. This is the establishment of another running trope in Dragon Ball, where the new character takes down a previously strong opponent to demonstrate their power. As they fight, Roshi attempts to appeal to Tien, but at the same time, Tien sleuths out Jackie Chun's real identity and steals his iconic technique to assert his superiority. After seeing this, Jackie decides to throw in the towel, to Tien's shock, as he can tell he had a lot more fight left in him. During Goku and Krillin's fight, Tien confronts Roshi, and learns of his plan to keep his students humble. Tien thinks Roshi quit, as Tien could accomplish his goal for him, but Roshi corrects him, saying his pupils won't be so easily swayed anymore. He also takes this chance to further build distrust in the Crane Hermit's ideology. Ironically, Roshi teaches Tien a lesson about the pitfalls of pride, in strong contrast to a future certain someone. In the conclusion to Goku and Krillin's fight, Tien sees just how impressive Goku really is, and is excited to take him on. In response to receiving a beatdown from Goku, Tien can only respond with excitement, as a true martial artist. They continue their intense match, but eventually, Crane Hermit starts cheating, as he wants to see Goku suffer for killing Tao. But, as a true man of his craft, Tien is outraged. This is the catalyst for Tien to denounce the Crane School, realizing he cares more about the sanctity of the arts than dominance and killing. Master Roshi takes out Crane Hermit so the big match can continue, and after another clash, Tien realizes he's outclassed in terms of raw power, but Tien can still fall back on his superior bag of techniques. Tien in this arc, and even for the rest of the series, probably has the largest collection of techniques out of any character, from the solar flare to the Dodon Ray, to crazy moves like growing extra arms and cloning himself. Tien shows that Ki in Dragon Ball can basically do anything. In terms of being a pure martial artist, Tien might be the best in the series. And here, Tien pulls out the strongest move in the series, the Tri-Beam, boasting such incredible power that he has to warn Goku to dodge it, so he won't be killed. And their final clash, Goku outsmarts Tien and was about to win, but with a
London. All you can do is die. This is practical optimism.
All you can do is die.
Aliens crash landed on Earth. What would you show them first to help them understand humans?
A knife, a wheel. I got it. Wood. It's the only thing that's unique to Earth. I'll for sure showing them wooden houses, flexing up on their dumbass.
What one thing are people missing about creativity?
Creativity calls for more than intelligence. There's so much that goes on that's not analysis. You know what I mean? That's how. London. All you can do is die. This is practical optimism with Earl Sweatshirt.
If aliens crash landed on Earth, what would you show them first to help them understand humans?
A knife, a wheel. I got it. Wood. It's the only thing that's unique to Earth. I'll for sure showing them wooden houses, flexing up on their dumbass.
What one thing are people missing about creativity?
Creativity calls for more than intelligence. There's so much that goes on that's not analysis. You know what I mean? That's happening when you're operating out of the intellectual faculty of your brain. A lot of spiritual practices are about shutting down that faculty of the brain so that you can access different parts of yourself that aren't necessarily a spirit or an outside of yourself thing. It's in you, but you just had to shut your secretary up.
What's your process for doing that? Do you have one?
I smoke a lot of weed. I drink club mate if I can get my hands on it in the States. Holla at your boy. And then I'll listen to music. And then I found out from studying I just kind of do what people be doing in different spiritual practices.
What do you think people are getting wrong about the future?
Aren't we gonna run out of water because of AI? So that niggas could make pictures of Michael Jordan and Kobe Bryant standing in the trap? I feel like it's just gonna hold people's hand into mediocrity.
Tell us a piece of practical optimism.
All you can do is die. No matter which way that this shit goes, you're gonna die. It's okay. Seriously, it's gonna be okay. This is practical optimism with Earl Sweatshirt. You have to come see me at South by Southwest in June. Tickets are on sale now. London. All you can do is die. This is practical optimism with
Everyone at one point or another in their life has tried to go Super Saiyan. It's natural, I'll admit it, you can admit it, it's a safe space. And while like me, you probably failed, what if you actually succeeded? What if you went Super Saiyan? What would you be capable of? How strong would you be? Could you actually solo the world? Today we're gonna figure that out. Let's jump into it. Before we get into any of the fun stuff, we need to establish a couple things to actually give us some perspective and give us a basis for which this discussion can be launched off of. First thing is the Super Saiyan multiplier, which is super straightforward. It's told to us directly in the Daizenshuu, where it's stated to be a 50 times amplification on a Saiyan's baseline physical parameters, specifically speed, strength, and overall ki output by 50 times. They just get 50 times stronger. It's not really that complex. A good metric in series that would allow us to see how ridiculous the jump would be the farmer with a shotgun, who is noted by Raditz' scouter to have a power level of 5. If this out of shape farmer with a shotgun were to go Super Saiyan, he would then have a power level of 250, 5 times 50, 250. This would allow him to soar past juggernauts in original Dragon Ball like Master Roshi, who had a power level of 180, and put him right next to Goku and King Piccolo with their power levels of 260. This being a version of Goku who had drank the Super God Water and awakened his hidden power, being noted on par with King Piccolo, with this same King Piccolo in the Daizenshuu being noted to be capable of easily blowing away a city and having power that rivals that of a small nuclear bomb. Not saying the farmer is capable of these feats, but you kind of see the levels that we would be approaching in some sense. Let's break down some easy numbers to give us some perspective. Let's say your bench press is 225 pounds for a 1 rep max. If you were to go Super Saiyan, your bench press would shoot up to 11,250 pounds. This would allow you to bench press a few different things.
If you say your mom, you're fired!
Such as a large African elephant, a loaded ambulance, a medium-duty box truck, a small orca, or 2 large SUVs, most of which operate on the 10 to 12,000 pound spectrum. What about speed? Well, if we take the average mile somebody in their 20s would be able to run, that being 8 to 10 minutes, then you get some pretty interesting metrics. You would be able to finish that mile not in minutes, but in seconds. That 8 mile would turn into 9.6 seconds, the 9 mile would turn into 10.8 seconds, and the 10 mile would turn into 12 seconds. So you'd run the mile in roughly 9.6 to 12 seconds. This totals out to an average speed of 300 to 375 miles per hour. This would make you faster than pretty much every supercar on the planet, even faster than Formula 1 cars that are able to reach peak straight line speeds of about 220 to 235 miles per hour. In fact, this would actually put you closer to smaller aircrafts in general, which more so travel around the 200 to 400 mile per hour range. Using the absolute fastest metric in that you actually ran the mile in the fastest time, then you would at your best, that being 375 miles per hour, be able to move at Mach 0.49, just under half of Mach 1 or the speed of sound. While I would like to talk about flying speed, you actually would not have the innate ability to fly. Let me explain. First I have to talk about Ki, which is known as the latent energy or fighting power that directly translates to light force in Dragon Ball. This force is tangible energy inside of every living being, and by drawing out, an individual is able to manipulate it and use it outside the body. Every living being has the ability to manipulate it to some degree, although most don't know how to utilize it. Because there is a upper limit or physical limits to the strength of the body, it's generally necessary to increase one's Ki to overcome this barrier and just become stronger all around. If you actually recall from Dragon Ball Z, Goten was able to turn Super Saiyan, yet was unable to fly. In Dragon Ball, flight or the sky dancing art is actually a technique that requires a user to manipulate their inner Ki. The general idea is that the character in question is putting their Ki underneath them, forcing it down similar to an engine or helicopter, and then pushing air down to rise from above the ground. You're like Goten in this situation where you haven't done any formal training with your Ki, so you wouldn't be able to use Ki techniques at least initially. Considering humans in Dragon Ball can learn to manipulate their Ki as a result of it being the life force of every being, this would be something you could potentially do in the future, given enough time if you're willing to learn it. But that flying point isn't actually a ton of fun, so let's look at something a little more interesting. Let's look at, let's just say, what your vertical jump would jump to. Get it? The average untrained human male has a standing vertical jump height of about 16 to 20 inches. Plugging this into our handy Super Saiyan transformation multiplier, this would give us a height jump while in Super Saiyan of 800 inches to 1000 inches, or 66.7 feet to 83.3 feet. This would allow you to jump the height of a 6 to 8 story building, making it so you would be able to leap buildings in a single bound. So while the limitation of not being able to fly would be something kind of annoying, you would just be able to kind of Incredible Hulk it and just make superhuman leaps across the city or wherever you're trying to go. Back to this discussion though, if you wanted to talk about something more interesting like striking strength or how much punching force you would actually be able to emit, this somewhat does depend on your training level, as boxers compared to untrained athletes have varying levels of force they're able to output with their punches. No duh. The untrained human is generally able to output 100 to 200 pounds of punching force, which times 50 translates to 5,000 to 10,000 pounds of force. If you wanted to look at a higher end for this, the average punch of a professional boxer ranges from 500 to 1,000 pounds of force. Considering this same multiplication for Super Saiyan, this would put you from 25,000 pounds of force to 50,000 pounds of force. Now this actually isn't worth as much until you actually get into the idea that your punch would also be moving 50 times faster than normally, which is directly what's going to impact the energy that you're going to output and the overall damage you can exert, not only on whatever you're punching but the surrounding area. If you're basing this off an untrained individual, their average punch speed would range between 13 to 20 miles per hour. I'm also comparing this to a professional fighter whose punch speed would range from 20 to 25 miles per hour. You would get between 750 to 1250 miles per hour. This would actually put your striking speed at roughly Mach 1 to 1.6. But again, the bigger overall effect is the energy you are going to be able to output. Taking in the average mass of your punch, which is variable depending on if you're an athlete or not, because the average mass generally ranges from 6 pounds to just over 15 pounds, compared to actual Olympic athletes or just professional athletes in general who can actually get upwards of 66 pounds. You actually plug this into the kinetic energy formula, which is 1/2 times mass velocity squared, and you can actually get something upwards of 281 kilojoules or 281,000 joules using an 11-pound punch as a unit for the mass of our punch. This actually is enough energy to like charge your phone twice, or like once or twice, just by throwing a single punch, which is pretty crazy. While this is all very impressive, I think there are some bigger questions we need to ask. Can we take over the world? Well,
Space alien.
I'd do anything to see this concert. I'd wait in an infinite queue.
I'd stay up all night to get tickets. I'd miss my grandma's funeral for this show.
I quit my job.
I traveled.
probably not. You'd be pretty powerful, like we've already been establishing, but there's a couple problems with you trying to take on the world 1v1. And it heavily depends on not only can you manipulate your ki, because if you can't, you're kind of cooked. First and foremost, the world would have options for you if you just declared war on the world in the form of a neutron bomb or just a dirty bomb, both being laced with radiation or radioactive waste. Despite how fast you are, you would not be able to outrun a neutron bomb. The burst releases intense neutron radiation that travels at roughly 1 to 5% the speed of light, which is Mach 8,810 to Mach 44,050. So you're not outrunning shit, dude. You're getting cooked. You're not going to be able to do anything about it. And despite going Super Saiyan, you would actually have no innate resistance to these types of attacks, as at the end of the day, you're still human. You're still gonna have to eat, drink, sleep, and can still be poisoned. I mean, even characters in Dragon Ball aren't immune to certain hexes unless they're just distinctly above them, which you most certainly are not going to be. Furthermore, there is the question of if you're just going to be able to just tank bullets. Bullets are overall a bit more difficult to tackle since more force put into a lower surface area results in a much stronger localized impact due to the energy having nowhere else to go. So you're dealing with something a bit different than blunt force trauma, which you are going to be more suited to take on, especially if you're going to be able to move your body and not have it get obliterated from moving at these speeds or being able to lift this amount of weight. But the problem with this question is that real human tissue isn't bullet resistant, meaning amplifying its strength and durability 50 times isn't really the clearest answer. This gets a little difficult to talk about since human skin is more so tough and stretchy. It actually has a pretty decent amount of tensile strength, but this doesn't actually equate directly to puncture resistance. But we could still find a way. The stiffness or elasticity of human skin typically ranges from about 20 MPa or 20 megapascal to about 30 MPa or 30 megapascal. Megapascal is a metric unit of pressure or stress that equals 1 million pascals. Pascals are a unit needed to measure pressure and stress, the standard metric for doing so. This usually or commonly being associated with different pressures or just material stress in general. This is taken under a younger skin model, and this does change depending on the age or hydration of the skin, the test method in question, or the body part that you're looking at. But plugging this into our Super Saiyan multiplier, we would actually get a megapascal rating of 1500. This is actually less than half or just about half of Kevlar, which is one of the most common materials used for body armor or safety gear in general, meaning that if you go off this Kevlar metric, you probably just wouldn't be tanking bullets, although you would be far more resistant to them than you were before. You might be alright with like low velocity projectiles, that might just be an overall irritation for you, but once you actually get into firearms that are able to pierce through Kevlar or Kevlar piercing rounds, yeah, forget it. You're just not going to be able to walk away from that. If you actually did want to approach those bulletproof levels that we kind of want from our Super Saiyan transformation, we would need to go to Super Saiyan 2, which is a 100 times multiplier or 2 times Super Saiyan, which would put us in the 3000 megapascal range. But keep in mind, this still wouldn't mean you wouldn't be feeling bullets, so it's just a very hard thing to get across that we're actually going to be bulletproof with the Super Saiyan transformation, which just makes this whole world conquering point, or even just walking around the world as an unchallenged god, really impossible. Think the Hulk being bulletproof yet still being affected by bullets in his more conservative interpretations of the character. This is another reason for, even if you were very strong, you wouldn't really be able to walk around butt naked taking on the world while you're Super Saiyan. I don't know why I said you had to be naked, I just threw that in. Ignore me, bro. All that being said though, even assuming that every part of our skin actually gets amped up and we just do gain an innate puncture resistance, we would have something closer to armor-like skin that would be very useful against smaller firearms. I would make the case, however, that this point isn't actually as relevant if you're just going to take on the world or try and 1v1 an army, as like we established previously, your physical body can only get so strong, but Ki enhances every aspect of a character from Dragon Ball's body, making them stronger, faster, and more durable. This is why somebody like Goku can still get taken off guard and get damaged by bullets when he's rusty, as if he's not actively defending himself with his Ki, his defense is not going to scale to what it actually is at full power when his Ki and guard are up. You can even just look at original Dragon Ball where this is presented to be the case, where Goku is actually able to tank explosions from Piccolo point blank, yet is taken off guard by Piccolo's mouth blast when he's convinced of victory, getting pierced through the chest. There's a clear limit, and the fact that you can not only manipulate your Ki, but you're just getting an overall buff means that you likely would also be able to get taken off guard, even if you are just a stronger variation of yourself. And somebody's gonna bring this up, so I figure I'll mention it, the idea of using Ki Blast. And Ki Blasts are formed from discharge portions of Ki, but they are still technically an application of Ki, being a direct result of a fighter channeling their Ki in combat. This makes it so that if you don't have any formal Ki training, you're pretty much not going to be able to use Ki Blast in general, but I mean, if you figured out a way to train your Ki, you could start developing these techniques. It just isn't something that's contingent on the Super Saiyan transformation, as this is something that plenty of characters have done without it. I'm sorry to say, you're not really going to be firing a Gallic gun whenever the Starbucks employee gets your order wrong. So at the end of the day, if you actually were able to turn Super Saiyan, not only would you be able to really just dismantle most walls or vehicles in general, but you would be something closer to a superhuman, or the closest thing I can imagine to it being is a more conservative interpretation of the Incredible Hulk. Super strength, super speed, and you're just going to be jumping all around the place. Maybe a slight bit less durable, however. Let me know what you guys think down below. Do you agree, disagree, why? Like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video. Check out my Sharingan video on this sort of, what if you had this power in real life if you're interested in that sort of stuff. Or like and subscribe if you want to just see more of this type of content, and I'll catch
This is one of the best portable gaming experiences that you can buy in 2026. Just let that sink in for a second. So for whatever reason, it seems like the PSP has become really cool again. And of course, I'm not at all immune to hopping on the bandwagon. And so I've been messing around with a couple of these PSP 1000s right here. And I have to say, the PSP is actually a really cool system. Somehow I just feel like the PSP has a little bit more charm to it, especially once you have a UMD in your hand and you're loading your games on optical media in something that's probably a lot smaller than your phones. And you might have been able to notice that one of the first very obvious mods that I made to both of these PSPs actually is the screen right here. So yeah, I went ahead and followed in the steps of many other people who are great. And just something else really here, it's redid on because right one has a weird the all thing on especially this with for still press. if you're just wanting to learn how to program homebrew for a console, the PSP can teach you a lot of very fundamental things. Of course, the open source PSP SDK is available, so it's not that hard to start writing your own code or even just mess with the SDK examples. I used the mini USB port right there. I just hooked my PSP up to my computer, and I was able to start compiling demos and actually getting stuff running on my PSP. Not to mention, the PSP also has some really great emulators, and honestly, I think it makes it a really good contender in a world where most of the other emulation handhelds are basically just smartphones, and you can still sign into your social media. You'll still get bombarded with all your feeds that you don't really want to see. The PSP kind of gets around that. I think there's a really good merit to just having a device that only plays games. Sure, it has an internet browser, but it can't load websites, so you don't really have to worry about being always connected like you do with all of your modern devices. And of course, on both of my PSPs here, I am running the latest Arc 5 firmware. So if I check this out, you can see this is 6.61 Arc 5 CIPL. Arc 5 seems like the newest, most up-to-date custom firmware option, and it actually gives you a lot of really cool settings. Like, for example, if you want to set your CPU clocks in-game and in the XMB, maybe you want to save a little bit of battery in the XMB, and you want to overclock, you can go 443 megahertz right there out of the stock 333 megahertz clock on the PSP. That's actually going to be a pretty significant improvement. Not to mention, it gives you all the other nice things like enabling WPA2 support, so you can connect it to somewhat modern Wi-Fi routers, and a lot of other really helpful options that just make the PSP a lot nicer to use. Something that I did really want to try that just seems like it's a perfect fit for the PSP right here is actually emulating Game Boy Advance games, because it's really kind of interesting to realize that this right here only came out like 3 years after the Game Boy Advance. So to see something that had a way higher resolution screen and could literally emulate the Game Boy Advance is actually pretty impressive. And to show this off without getting my channel taken down by a certain infamous video game company, I'm going to be using this ROM right here, which is a port of the Bloxers Flash game from when I was in like elementary school. So you probably remember from when I was testing out the Japanese portable dictionary right here. I actually used the exact same ROM. So we'll go ahead and see if I can play it any better this time. Go ahead and start a new game. Go through right here. And I can already say that the form factor and everything of the PSP, as you can imagine, is much more suited to playing GBA games than a Japanese dictionary. I still can't do it because I'm trying to remember how to speak to the camera, and so I'm not able to clear even the simplest parts of the level. But you can see that is actually running perfectly fine. It does look like we have a frame rate counter up here, which is staying locked at a constant 60 frames per second. I'm sure the Game Boy Advance does have some more demanding titles that would probably run into some performance issues, but at least for this game right here, it is running it perfectly fine.
Well, of course, one of the things that you have to remember about the PSP is that this is 2004, and one thing that the PSP was not competing against, in Sony's eyes anyway, is the smartphone, because they wouldn't exist for another 3 years or so, and that means that the PSP is actually kind of a surprisingly good platform for media consumption as well. And the XMB kind of reflects this. It's of course the same interface that Sony used on the PlayStation 3. It feels right at home here, and the PSP somewhat famously uses the exact same audio DAC right there for the headphone jack. That was featured in some iPods, like the iPod Classic 5.5, meaning that it actually has some very good sound quality, all things considered. I went ahead and threw my music library on here and went ahead and listened to it, and as far as I can tell, this thing sounds really, really good. That's a lot more than you expect from any other handheld game console nowadays.
All in all, I think what really draws me to the PSP more than anything else is just the fact that it does so much with so little. We've got a 333 megahertz MIPS core and 32 megabytes of RAM on this little handheld. And honestly, to see just how much work was put into some of the retail games for the PSP back when it was actually relevant shows you that maybe we're not going in the right direction, making everything even more expensive, even more powerful, and even heavier. when really you can have an amazing gaming experience with something like the PSP. So, I hope you thought this was interesting, and thank you very much for watching.
I uploaded and distributed my tracks for SoundCloud to every major platform. I keep 100% of my royalties. SoundCloud doesn't take a cut. And with fan support...
If you remember begging your parents for the dual-action web shooter, thinking that Chad Kroeger was the coolest singer in the world, and web-swinging from the sky...
Oh, don't get your diapers in a bunch!
And web-action web shooter, thinking that Chad Kroeger was the coolest singer in the world... We're going to take a look back at that magical time in 2002 that saw Spider-Man take over the big screen before spilling out onto the toy store shelves, school playgrounds, and cell phone carriers for some reason. But first, let's set the scene. The story of the original Spider-Man movie dates all the way back to the 80s when Canon Films, known for low to mid-budget action movies, got the license from Marvel. Before they even shot a single frame of the movie, they released a bunch of publicity shots and a trailer to garner interest from potential distributors and merchandisers.
Spider-Man, the movie. A live-action spectacular directed by Joe Zito.
Unfortunately, Canon's many financial issues ended up stalling that version of the movie. Eventually, the rights would be sold to Carolco, where James Cameron would sign up to write and direct the movie sometime in the mid-90s. Cameron even went as far as writing a condensed version of the script, which would have starred DiCaprio as Peter Parker and had him do it with MJ on top of the Brooklyn Bridge. I'm not making this up. Now, Carolco took too long to get the funds together, by which point Cameron had moved on to some small boat picture. Eventually, Sony would acquire the film rights from the struggling Marvel in the late 90s for a mere $7 million. After talking to a bunch of different directors, including Michael Bay and Chris Columbus, they would settle on Sam Raimi and start production in 2000 for an initial release date in the summer of 2001.
In Philadelphia, we root
Bro, I'm
for the
going
home
to
team
sleep.
because they're our team too. And with more than 80